Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside It Makes the Inside Better. My name is Jeanne Gallagher, and I'm here with Denise Stegall. Hey, Denise.
Hi, Jean. How are you today?
I am great, and I love this. We're going in depth today. I think I'm going to call them in depth with Denise and Jeanne because that's what we're going to do. Instead of having an additional guest, it's going to be Denise and I are going to be talking to you all about health span versus lifespan. And before I dive in, I just always like to toss in there too, if you're listening to us on a podcast format and you'd like to see our shiny, happy faces, or the goofy faces that might come out of this, jump on over to YouTube to check us out. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me during the via the webpage or through YouTube comments, whatever works, and we'll get those taken care of. So we did a short little snippet about health span versus lifespan. And as we started talking, I'm thinking, you know what? This subject really needs a deep dive. And here we are. So before we start, everybody should really know the difference between health span versus lifespan. But Denise, can you really get into it and define the two, create that picture as a great foundation? And then we're going to dive into the conversation.
Sure, absolutely. So we talk so often about lifespan. Now, lifespan specifically is how long you live,
Mhm.
right? You could live to 50, you could live to 60, 100. That is your lifespan, okay? Just the years in your life. Health span, on the other hand, is the number of years that you live free from chronic disease, pain, dependence. So it's the number of years that you live healthfully, right? And when we think about health span, we're not, we're all aging. We're not necessarily talking, wrinkles and gray hair, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But truly, health span gives you the ability to walk, to travel, to live alone, to cook, to play, to do all of the things that you love to do today
Mhm.
into your 60s, 70s, 80s, and even into your 90s. So it really is about quality of life.
That's really important. And I think it's easy to say, and it sounds like it's easy to figure out, but I think that it's important for people to take a few moments to put themselves in the right mindset. And it's it's not uncommon to say, "Oh, I feel really great now, living for today," but not thinking about what's my life going to be in 20 years? Or not what is it going to be? What do I want it to be? And taking the time to self-reflect. What's really important for you? And in can imagine yourself 20 years from now or 30 years from now. What's that picture really look like for you? And how different is it from where you are today? And then also, how different is it from some of your older relatives that might be at that stage?
It's very true. I think very often we do live in the moment.
Hmm.
And disease, if we feel good, we don't realize that there's stuff going on in our body, right? We don't feel it. We don't feel inflammation that is in our body. We may not have stiff joints right now. That doesn't mean it's not that your body's not fighting something. That just because you feel good doesn't mean that down the road in a year and 3 and 5 and 10 that these things are going to affect you, because truly people don't get frail when they're 80. They start getting frail when they're 50.
Hmm.
This is when we start to notice, we've gained some weight. Maybe we're not as agile as we used to be. We're not moving the way we did when we were, kids in their tens, in their 20s and 30s,
Oh,
right?
I'm just getting older.
Right. We say that, people say that all the time and use it as an excuse to live a lifestyle that is un- insufficient for a long health span.
I like that. Hold on. I like that. A lifestyle that's inefficient for a healthy lifespan.
In a long health span.
Long health. Yes.
Right. When I say insufficient, I think everyone understands that word, right? We know if we're eating healthy food most of the time and we're getting
Hmm.
adequate sleep, this 7 to 9 hours, and we're getting exercise, we know that we are putting sufficient amount of effort. But more often than not, we're busy, we don't feel good, we're tired. So we don't focus on those things. And so that insufficiency actually starts at a much younger age
Hmm.
than I think most of us expect. We expect when we're 80 that we may be old or older, right?
Hmm.
But you're right, when you look at family members that are in their 70s and 80s, how are they living? Are they going from doctor's visit to doctor's visit, living on pills because they did not take care of themselves?
Hmm.
And of course, we do have control over our health span. I think that's really important to mention. You have control over this. Yes, there are some genetics that we have to manage and we have to deal with. But that doesn't mean because somebody in your family has type 2 diabetes or somebody in your family has heart disease that you're going to have one of those.
It's normal for us to go to the doctor, have our yearly annual physical, and then leave, find out what medication we should or shouldn't be on. But that's the end of the conversation typically in that kind of an environment, unfortunately. You have to really look outside of the normal constraints of the medical system in order to figure out how does how does activity fit into your personal situation? And so, as a disclaimer, we're not here to give medical advice and we're not here to do any of that. But what we're here to do is to hopefully make somebody say, oh, maybe I should be doing more. Yes, you do need to contact your doctor and consult with them and before you start any activity for whatever reason and get that disclaimer out of the way. So all disclaimers are all done. And so now you really
Ditto.
it's important to find the right resources in your community and to be able to understand how do I maintain in order to figure out where you want to go. In order, when I talk to people about setting goals, in order to set a goal, you have to dream big and you have to just have that moment. But you also have to understand where are you right now and then where do you want to be and then break it down. What do you need to do between now and then to get to where you want to be? And when you're talking about finances and budgeting, it's super hard and it's awful to do, but it's right there. It's more black and white than it is with your physical body and you're trying to quantitate activity and what does that really look like to you and not compare yourself to everybody else on ridiculous social media platforms. So
Right.
set that aside too, if you can, and work through all of that madness. But I think in order to determine what the next 20 or 30 years looks like, you have to figure out where you are now and what's your body composition now and what's that baseline look like and how do people do that?
That's important. That's an important thing. I was going to go back to something you said about going to see your doctor, your annual exam. So often people don't do that, and I absolutely recommend that. Especially once you hit 50, you really need to go to see your doctor because, like you said, you need to know what your baselines are.
Mhm.
You may feel good, but something may be going on that you don't know. Maybe you have high cholesterol. Maybe that's starting to creep up,
Mhm.
right? Maybe there's a heart thing going on that you didn't know about. I just recently had a DEXA scan, which is for bone density. And again, so I know where I am baseline.
Mhm.
Now,
Well,
up
wait,
to,
Denise, what is a DEXA scan?
yes, a DEXA scan is a bone density scan that it takes literally 5 minutes for them to go through and, depending on if they're going through your whole spine, they'll go through your spine with basically a big X-ray, an X-ray machine. Um, they pay attention to your pelvic area, hips, because a lot of people, we know hip fracture is a thing,
Mhm.
especially more often for women as we get older. And then knees and ankles, joints, these, to see what type of wear and tear we have on our joints and in our bones. So bone density is important. If you think about, a healthy bone is solid.
Mhm.
A bone that has osteopenia, which is a precursor to osteoporosis, this is a bone that that almost looks like Swiss cheese. It has little holes in it,
Mm.
right? So it's almost, to me, I think of it as like tooth decay, right? But on a large scale. So a DEXA scan goes through and checks to see what's going on in these various areas of your body. Now, for some, like, I'm right-handed. And so my right side, hip, shoulders, all of those bones may be a little bit stronger than the left side.
Mhm.
We actually did not find that, which was interesting. My results were I am in the normal range for a woman at 54 years old. And they
Mhm.
show a graph. So it's helpful for us to understand where we are today,
Mhm.
health wise, um, with the support of a physician, whether it's a traditional doctor or a naturopath or a non-traditional physician, right? It's always good to have somebody like that on your team,
Mhm.
right? And more often than not, they will have a recommendation. Now, the thing I think is important to talk about with traditional medicine is doctors are trying to always take care of symptoms. So if you have a headache, they give you Tylenol, right? They're not necessarily thinking, what is causing this headache, right? So when you go to a doctor and say your cholesterol is a little high, they may say, "Oh, well, we can put you on medication." There is always that option. However, another option is, let's see where I am today and what I can do on my own with support of my friends and family.
Mhm.
What can I do to reduce that high cholesterol with diet and exercise and a healthy lifestyle? I just said
It's
a lot.
interesting. No, that's okay. We'll break it down too. The DEXA scan is really interesting, and having one done is incredibly informative. But what's I've never been told by a doctor to get a DEXA scan. However, I've had two since I had my hip replaced because I wanted to know, not from a bone density standpoint, I wanted to know what my muscle rebuild looked like. And I did it, 6 months and then, well, less than 6 months because I'm impatient. And then, and then not quite, it doesn't really matter when I did it, but I wanted to know is the work that I'm putting in building the muscle in the places that I was deficient because of the hip issue? And if not, do I need to up my game? It's that same process. I needed a baseline and then I needed to do some work. What I was the result of the DEXA scan also gave me the bone density piece. And here's a if people are really wanting to take a medical dive into bone density, I just recently listened to the Peter Attia Navigating Bone Health podcast. And so if you're looking for it, it came out on July 6th and it was a rebroadcast of his show number 214. It's a great piece to dive into. And one interesting fact that really stuck with me is that for people 65 or older that fall and break a hip, their survival 25%, their survival rate, 25% of that population of people that fall and break a hip that are over 65 have a 25% chance of passing away in 6 months.
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah. And the challenge, of course, at that stage, if somebody
That's
at 60,
motivating.
that's motivating. That should be very motivating. And this is why I'm glad we're talking about DEXA scan
Hmm.
early. Now, it's not something that is typically on a general practitioner's um, mind.
Mm-mm.
This is something that you do have to be your own advocate for. Um, because it's something it actually is a test that can be a preventative, right? If you find out that you already have some bone loss and you're 50, you know that you need to do some work to build that bone, because you can build bone. It's easier to build it when you're 50 than it is when you're 65 and over. Can you
Hmm.
still do it? Yes, but you've lost so much at that point that it's that much more difficult. And that's actually one of the reasons why 25% of the people 65 and over who do fall and break a hip pass away within 6 months is they've already lost so much bone mass, and
Hmm.
let's be real, more than likely muscle mass.
Hmm.
And at that stage, if they haven't had a DEXA scan, are have they gone through all of the other checkups that are really necessary to understand, where you are health wise? Because it isn't always about how you feel. We, especially when we feel good, I'm healthy. Well, are you healthy at 250 pounds and 5'1"? Probably not. You may
Hmm.
feel fine, but there's other things going on in your body, your metabolism, inflammation, all of these things um, that are happening kind of silently, kind of like I always think of inflammation is like the silent saboteur or the silent killer, because you don't know unless you tripped and you sprain an ankle, you get some acute inflammation, right? Your ankle's a little swollen, but you don't feel internal inflammation per se.
Hmm.
And year after year after year of chronic inflammation just leads to these other disease states, and osteoporosis, bone fracture, muscle loss, or are some of these that we don't think about until it's almost too late.
And you said that it's possible to build back bone density.
It is. Yes.
And once you've determined your baseline, so then there's two thoughts that should happen: maintaining what you have and
Mhm.
or building onto what you have.
Absolutely. And that's where strength training comes in. That's where things like jumping, I mean, it sounds kind of dorky, but jumping up and down, like play hopscotch with your grandkids. That is actually helping bone density. I have a machine, I forget what it's called. It's right behind me. It's one of those that you get on and it kind of shakes and you kind of do this like for 10 minutes. That the name will come to me, I promise. That's another tool that we can use to increase bone density. It also helps with muscle mass too.
And what's interesting is that people will say, "Well, I'm a runner. I run," but it's not the same thing. The strength training versus running are two different activities, obviously, but they do two different things to your body. Your cardio exercise portion isn't necessarily going to help you build that bone density. You have to do the strength training in order to make that happen.
Right, they go together. Cardio and strength training go together. So does flexibility training and stability training. The whole package, right?
Hmm.
You can't just do one and say, "Oh, it's gonna be fine." It really is. We talk about, think about it when it comes to, a healthful diet too. You can't just eat, bananas for the rest of your life and say, "Well, I eat fruit, so I'm healthy." Right? Running. Now I'm a runner. I'm a little less of a runner than I used to be. First, since I guess about 3 months ago, I pulled a hamstring, and
Oof.
so it took 2 months to really get back on track. But running is great, like you said. It's great for our cardiovascular health. That is heart health, and
Hmm.
that is going to help fight some inflammation. right? And yes, there is some bone density benefit because, you're kind of not jumping up and down, but, you are kind of propelling yourself forward. Walking is equally as good. We now know a lot of people wear a weighted vest
Mhm.
when they walk. They call it rooking, I believe.
Yes, they
Uh,
do.
and again, this just helps to increase our bone density. If you're wearing a weighted vest, you're kind of doing weightlifting without actually feeling like you're lifting weights.
Hmm. Yeah, that important component of just adding on to either adding on to what you're doing, but I think the importance that I've gotten out of strength training, because, both my kids are like, oh, you got to do this. Oh, you got to, I'm like, I don't need to. I'm doing all these other things. Why would I need to do that? And I finally gave in. Thank goodness I finally gave in. It has so many other benefits of being able to just do things. And I'm flexible. I have pretty decent cardio. I've got all, I hike and I do all of that, but I wasn't really paying attention to the other important factors of the weight training and the strength training piece. And I feel so much better.
And muscle burns fat.
Hmm.
So if you're
And I can eat
overweight,
more
and you can eat more.
because I love food.
I mean, I'm a foodie, so I get that. Um, when you are building muscle, when you're weight training and you're building muscle, right? Um, you are increasing your ability to you're increasing your health span, right?
Mhm.
Because think about an older woman who has no muscle tone, who can't pick up, a bag off the from the grocery store, right? So it's not just about, building muscle, like, hello, I've got muscle. Um, yes, for those of you who are just listening, yes, I am flexing my muscles here. It's not, it's it is about building muscle, but it's more about the muscle that you need to live a normal lifestyle, that you can live on your own, that you can drive, that you can walk, that
Mhm.
you can travel and do all the things that I mentioned earlier, right? We don't want to become that old lady at 70, who basically is stuck in a chair because she doesn't have the strength, she doesn't have the muscle to get up and down off of it, up and down off the chair and walk for, you know down to the mailbox or not.
One of the things that changed the mindset for me, yes, the kids, I say kids, but they're functioning
They're grown
adults
adults who
with
have
kids.
kids.
Right. But one of the motivating factors for me, and everybody has to find, and I want to touch on this before we run out of time, is how do you find resources? For me, because my kids are CrossFit kids, that's where I went first. And honestly, it was overwhelming. I'm like, oh my God, I can't keep up with you guys. Oh, there's doing too much. But you find the right spot, and it's not like that. I think the most important part for me for CrossFit is that there's a coach right there that's teaching you about form and teaching you about how to properly do things. And that's so important.
Mhm.
And it's not about how much you can do, it's about doing what you can do correctly. But I've talked about this before, and it today was the workout this morning. Annie, 94. She might have turned 95. And Annie did 10 burpees.
Go Annie. I
Yeah,
want to meet
and
this lady.
and we were doing jump ropes, and so we were doing 50 burpees, and she only in quotes did 10. Good Lord, she's 95. And we were jumping rope, and so she was holding onto the rig and she was jumping. And
Mhm.
she said to the coach, "Okay, watch me." And he did. She goes, how hard did I go? How much did I jump? And he's like, you jumped this much. And she goes, really? Because when I started here, I couldn't do it at all.
And she's 95 and
If
she's still doing
anybody
it.
has any excuses, you just have to watch her because she's
Yeah.
coming in. She's on the bike, she's on the rower, and she is so grateful to be moving. And it was I don't know, 6 months ago or so, she'd actually fallen because she was working in her garden and she toppled over. And there was a point through her recovery where she was walking with a walker, and we're all going, "Oh my gosh, I hope that she's stronger now than she was before, not only because her body was in better shape to have something happen to her, but mentally she was in a different place." She's like, "Oh, she was at the gym before, just hanging out with us before she was allowed to do anything, because she wanted, it's that community piece.
Yeah,
And that community is really important for anybody that's starting any sort of new venture, especially
mm,
physically, is to not having to do it by yourself, because it's discouraging as hell. There's nothing worse than that.
absolutely.
Ugh. And, if you're going to do
Community.
something really hard, do
Mm,
something with other people that are struggling with you.
absolutely. And every community has something. And it doesn't have to be a very expensive
Mm-mm. Silver
gym.
sneakers.
Love silver sneakers. Your insurance pays for it.
Hmm. Right.
Right? So locally here, there is a place that initially when it opened, they thought it was going to be for people 65 and over. But they realized very soon, one, in a town of 125,000 people, there were not as many people that age that they thought. And that was the one. But number two, people who were in their 40s and 50s were saying, well, wait a minute. We want to be able to participate too. We need this too, where
Mhm.
initially they were thinking with the facility that this is going to be for seniors,
Mhm.
specific to seniors because they have different needs. Well, a woman at 40 has a different need than a woman at 50, than a woman at 60, men as well,
Mhm.
right? My nephew at 28, his body is very, very different than, his father's body at 54. I think he's the same age as
Mhm.
me, right? Not that they're any less strong, but at 28 he's a lot more flexible and he has a lot of he's young still, right? So he still has a little bit more um flexibility and stability and stamina than my brother-in-law does at his age. So I think it's important. You made a key point that I wanted to get back to about Annie was when she fell, her body was in a different place. She was healthier and
Mhm.
stronger. So when something did happen to her,
Right.
it wasn't catastrophic.
Mhm. It could have been. It could have been. And if she wasn't as strong as she was going into the event, it could have it could have been devastating. And
Mhm.
it's not. And how we think about it and our mental capacity to be okay doing hard things is really an important muscle that needs to be flexed.
I agree. I think our younger generation has a harder time with that than we do. And I lump you and I together. Because we're of that postmenopause age, so I lump
Mhm.
us together, even though I think we're 10 years apart. I think it's
How?
really go ahead.
Thanks a lot. We are 10 years apart. I forget that. That just
My
slapped
husband,
me right in the
my
face.
my husband and I are 14 years apart. Um,
Oh, that's funny.
but
Sorry.
I still kind of lump us in the same age range,
Yeah.
um, because we are in a different phase in our lives.
Hmm.
And what's really, really important is we've done hard things, and when we were younger, we were pushed to do hard things, right? We didn't have all of this, oh, everybody gets a medal type of, mindset. And I see this in people that I know in this younger generation, two people that I have in my mind specifically, who are so afraid to do hard things
Hmm.
because they never had to, because their parents always did it for them, right? So if you're listening to us and you're in your 20s and 30s, and maybe even your early 40s, doing hard things is one of the best things that you can do for your self-esteem. That's
Hmm.
another piece that I think when it comes to health span, our self-esteem, our mindset is essential. When we focus on these hard things, when we focus on a goal, right? And if it's a weight loss goal, great. 20 pounds, okay, 5 at a time. You got to lose one before you can lose 20.
Hmm.
If you go to the gym and you want to start lifting weights, you're going to pick up a 3 pound weight before you pick up a 30 pound weight,
Hmm.
right? So those things, when you start with the 3 and you think, okay, well, I'm starting, and you get to that 30 pound weight, and all of a
Mm.
sudden the accomplishment that you feel, right? That success that you feel. What else is going on in your life? You are successful,
Hmm. It
right?
feels good. Feels
We
really
all
good.
have our
It
own
helps
definition
put
of
the
success.
it helps put the yuck of the work in perspective.
Mhm.
And I call it the yuck of the work because every time I go to work out, I'm like, I don't know that I really want to do this. And then you look at the board and see what's on it's on to for today. And then when it's over, you go, oh, look what I just did.
Yeah,
Look what I just
absolutely.
did. And the only way that you get from one point to the other is consistency and commitment.
And that's mindset,
Hmm.
right? And we mentioned before community,
Hmm.
being around other people, you know, gets us going. They cheer us on. So that's one of the things that absolutely helps us in our health span, increase our health span, right? The more we're around people who are positive, who are trying to do some of the things that we're doing, wow, that just lifts us up
Hmm.
and it makes us want to go back the next time.
Yeah. So let's boil this down into a few little bullet points if we can. Um, Health span
Okay.
versus lifespan.
Health span being the number of years you live free of chronic disease, pain, dependence. It's
Okay.
about being able to walk, to travel, to cook, to play, to live a quality life. And it's about quality over quantity.
Okay.
Quantity is
Mine's,
important.
but, and what about mindset?
Mindset is the basis of so much of this. If you're 50 and you feel like you're already old, then you are.
Mm.
If you're 50 and you wow, your mindset, you're already well ahead of the game. And I've always thought, I know I'm 54 years old. I got a couple of gray hairs to show it, right? I still think that I'm 30.
Hmm.
Most days I feel like I'm 30. And why? Because I work out, because I sleep, because I eat well.
Hmm.
I'm
And drink
around
water.
people who are supportive. I have things that I love to do and conversations that I have with people who are like-minded.
Hmm. Yeah. And finally, tools.
Tools. First and foremost, when it comes to tools, I'm going to, Jean, you know what I'm going to say? I am going to say your number one tool is eat real food.
Eat real food. I knew
Eat
you were
real
going to
food.
say that.
You knew I was going to say that. The basis of a healthy lifestyle, a healthy lifespan, is about nutrition.
Hmm.
If you're not eating a diet full of the foods that your body needs to not just survive, but to optimize all of the other things that we're talking about, exercise, running, and strength training, and the mindset piece, all of that doesn't matter
Hmm.
because you won't have the energy. You will break down. You will have inflammation and chronic inflammation from sugar, processed foods, sitting too much, right? And what does inflammation cause? All of the chronic diseases that we have today: type 2 diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis, as we mentioned. right? These are things that build slowly in our midlife when we were too busy to notice it. So I hope today is a bit of a wake-up call that today is the day to start thinking, what I want to be, who I want to be, how I want to live when I'm 80, not 55. 55 is one thing. That's easy. That's next year. What do I want to be doing when I'm 80? What do you want to be doing when you're 80? I know what you want to be doing when you're 80, Jeanne.
Denise, thank you. Thank you so much. Great information, and it's such an important topic to discuss. So thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. It's always great chatting with you and having the banter and the thought process.